Welcome to Hockey Night in New York, where Islanders hockey always reigns supreme. Whether you were raised at the barn in Uniondale or born in the stable at Belmont, Hockey Night in New York is your home for all things Isles. Now, let's drop the puck and get this party started.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is Hockey Night in New York. Welcome to the program, everyone. It is Sunday, March 5th, 2023. Coming at you live from Floored Media. That's right, back here in Rockville Center with another great show coming up for you tonight. Two great guests coming up. Billy Jaffe of NESN and, of course, the NHL Network. And Adam Proteau of the Hockey News will be joining myself, Sean Cuthbert, and Mr. Chris Botta. Chris, been a little while. How you been, bud?
Been a long time, Sean. How you doing? I feel great. I had a couple of good trips, one business, one family/pleasure. I hope you're doing well. Great job with the shows the last few weeks.
Thank you very much, sir. And before we dive into this one, I'll remind you all that we are proud to be presented by Blue Line Deli and Bagels, located at 719 West Jericho Turnpike in Huntington, 217 Carlton Avenue in East Islip, and of course UBS Arena at Belmont. Also proud to be sponsored by Lost Farmer Brewing Company, located at 63A 2nd Street in Mineola, and of course Main Street Board Game Cafe, located at 307 Main Street in Huntington Village. More about them later on. So, Mr. Chris Botta,
Fun.
The trade deadline is come and gone.
Fun.
A lot of deals being made. The New York Rangers, the worst kept secret, I think, in the NHL, getting Patrick Kane finally before the deadline. Devils get Timo Meier. And, of course, the Islanders make more of a, I suppose, minor move. We'll see how it pans out for them. But they bring in Pierre Engvall from the Toronto Maple Leafs, and he's already slotted into the first line, gotten a shot up there. And we'll see how that pans out. But did the Islanders do enough to address their needs at the trade deadline?
I think they did what they could have. I didn't expect that they were going to make a major move. I was asked that all week. There comes a point where you're out of chips too, right? I think they would have. I think it's been secretive in a way that they were always interested in Chychrun, but in the end, even though Arizona wound up not getting as much as everybody thought. I mean, can we say this? Thank God the guy was finally traded. I was tired of hearing about it.
Okay.
Good luck in Ottawa. I think he's a good player. I think he showed that the other night in the Garden. But the Islanders they were out of draft picks, right?
Yeah.
If you were to look at and see what Ottawa gave up for Chychrun, the Islanders couldn't even do that. They would just be completely tapped out. So would have liked maybe another puck-moving defenseman, as we talked about before, with the Ghost, but they seem very happy with Aho. Pierre Engvall, we could say it's a minor move, and it's one of those moves that was an oh, by the way, right, when they did the rundown of the moves. Right. But in somewhat typical Islander fashion, Lamoriello era, Garth era, any era, he winds up on the first line in his first game back. So can you call it a minor move? They took on a contract. They took on a player who has some pedigree, is a 30, 35-point scorer. So I didn't think they were going to do anything in those 24 hours before the deadline, and for the most part, they didn't, and that's okay. Their big move, the guy they identified from the beginning, was Horvat, and already, not just the future, but in quick history, it's been proven to be the right move.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if we were going to be picky, you brought it up yourself already, maybe a puck-moving defenseman, maybe just another defenseman, a defenseman who even could be a stay-at-homer to kind of solidify things back there. A lot of concerns have been raised here on the show, whether it's myself, you, or Stefan, talking about maybe that sixth spot rotating between Sebastian Aho and Samuel Bolduc. And obviously right now it's Aho's position to lose at this point, but Lou Lamoriello decided, or at least at the end of the day, even if he made an attempt, this is the team that they're going with now.
Another positive to that, and to talk about the offensive defenseman, my guess is when they would go to Lane Lambert and Lou and everybody else, and here's the name, it's Ghost, it's somebody else, it would be like, okay, but am I going to play him every night? Because if I'm not going to play him every night, it's not worth a second-round pick or a third-round pick. Right. I think Ghost went for a third, I want to say. So there's that. The other thing that I consider a positive for the Islanders, and I don't want to give them too much credit. I don't want to give Mr. Lamoriello too much credit for thinking, because let's remember, this is the man who is often praised. It's often pointed out that he says, when you have time, use it. Well, he made his big move with time to go. I'm seeing a lot of these teams, Rangers being an obvious example, Toronto, And they've had good seasons. Boston, although nothing seems to stop Boston from losing. We can talk to Billy about that in 10 minutes. But a lot of these teams made some pretty radical changes.
Yeah.
Like I can't keep track.
Right.
I'm still putting on games saying, oh yeah, he's there now. I admit to that. Okay. And you wonder, 60, 62, 65 games into a season, is that the way to go? Because you're giving yourselves a runway of 17 games to mesh everybody in. We're already seeing, Kane, seems to be trying too hard with Panarin. They're not. I mean, yes, that's a very evil laugh, right? You didn't even mean it to come out that way, and it came out evil. I think another thing about that is I think Ranger fans are nervous now because it's like, I always point out the year a long time ago when Anaheim got Seany and Chris, and everybody said everybody else is playing for the Cup. Well, things get a little harder when those big names start showing up on the board, and they say, you got Tarasenko, and now you got Kane, and you're still not winning every night. It gets a little harder to play the game, which is why I think it would be a lot of fun if the Islanders wound up playing them. So just going back to my original point, they got in Horvat. He's been there more than a month, more like 5 weeks now, and he's fit in, and he feels like he's been there all season. They're missing Barzal right now, but I think there's something to be said for getting your major moves done earlier and giving your team more time to marinate.
Yeah, I agree with you, Chris, and I saw you throw out there on Twitter talking about the trade deadline grades and whatnot. What would you give the New York Islanders with all-encompassing, with even going back to Bo Horvat? How did they do with their trades?
I'll give them an A because Pierre Engvall is a try, right? That's the GM. There's no downside. Either he looks like a genius if Engvall can find another level, and worst comes to worst, they'll use these next few weeks to determine whether they want to extend him or not, whether they want to qualify him, whether he's worth that. I don't know, but they have a little time to decide that. If he doesn't work out, he will be easily forgotten. I don't mean that in a mean way. I just mean the move will be easily forgotten. If he works out, it'll be like, wow, he really got a steal. But I judged him just on the Horvat trade. I liked it when it happened. I like it even more now. You?
Yeah, Chris, I'm with you. Look, I mean, I don't think Horvat could have fit in any better than he has already. And he did when Barzal was still healthy in those first couple of games that he got in with him. And then even after him going down and with Lambert having to shift the lines around a little bit, bringing up Anders Lee and kind of figuring out who was going to be on the other side there. But even Lee and Horvat have developed some chemistry together. So maybe we'll see Barzal with the two of them if and when he comes back. Supposedly he will. And so far, I think that's an out-of-the-park move for Lou Lamoriello and the Islanders. Regardless of what Ratu and Anthony Beauvillier do over in Vancouver, and whatever that first-round pick ends up being, Bo Horvat was what the Islanders needed, and he's working out well. And he's here long-term. He signs the 8-year extension. I mean, what more can he ask for?
So, Sean Cuthbert, how do you see the playoff race right now? How many teams going for how many spots?
Well, I think that Detroit is now on the outside. I think Washington's fading out too with the moves that they made. I think Ottawa's in the mix now with the way they've been playing a little bit. And obviously the move that you just mentioned, I think Ottawa's going to be a player here. I think Ottawa, Buffalo, and the Pittsburgh Penguins are the teams that they're going to have to be most concerned about. The Florida Panthers are still there too. So maybe it's like, a 4 or 5 team race for 2 spots. I know that some people like to look at the points percentage to kind of get a gauge on really where the teams are at because of how the games played are all disparate. So there's 2 teams ahead of the Islanders right now in points percentage, and that's the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Buffalo Sabres. But the Sabres are only ahead by .003. So even with those games in hand, they're a little closer than you might think. So Tuesday is a huge game. We'll get into that on What's on Tap. But I like the Islanders' chances. They're in the first wild card spot now. That's going to change. If I had to use a crystal ball and project ahead, if and when they get in, which I think they will, it's going to be that second wild card because I would think that Pittsburgh will probably, when they make up those games in hand, they'll probably end up ahead of the Islanders, but there's no guarantee there either.
Okay. Right now, just on this date, I'll still say it's 6 teams going for 2 spots. By the way, I'm aware that there's not a big gap before you come across the Rangers. I'm going to go on the assumption that they will eventually figure it out, all these stars, and that they'll be good enough to get that spot. Mm-hmm. So Detroit, especially if they lose tonight, and if you want, we could do a live ceremony where they're losing 2-1 early third in Philadelphia. If they lose that game, think about it. By the way, Pittsburgh losing both of those games to the Islanders in regulation. Do you know what the standings would look like? I think they'd be like something like 36 points ahead of the Islanders if they just if they just won those games, with 5 games in hand.
And then Tampa gives the Islanders no help whatsoever.
No, and Tampa's got their own problems too.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe they fade. But right now, I'll still go for 6. The reason why I say Washington is I just mentioned this before. Sometimes when these teams appear to give up, their GMs give up on their teams and the guys go away, the remaining guys pressure off, let's stick it to the GM.
Sure.
Let's I can't rule out an Ovechkin team. They still have some talent there. Florida, the Islanders are fortunate that Florida has underachieved this year, and I believe they have underachieved this year. I still feel, and I'll probably say this through 82 games, that they're the team most capable of running off 8 in a row. There's still some talent there, but that said, I'm not optimistic for them. I agree with you on Buffalo. I'm going to resist talking about Buffalo until the look ahead because there's an important point to make there. So there's still, Pittsburgh, they've made the moves. They've started to play a little bit better. They're one of those teams that made a bunch of moves, and I wonder about them all coming together. So I'm still going to hold it to 6 teams minus Detroit for now, going for 2 spots. Know about the games in hand, but we'll have a pretty good picture on that. I know that we say this every week, but next week we're going to have a little bit of a better picture on that.
Yeah, there's no question about it, and it's just fun, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is going to be great to watch from here until the end, right? A nice like 5-6 team horse race down to the very end, and you have some big games coming up that are going to have huge impacts on where this whole thing's going to go.
It's amazing to think, you do this show every Sunday, give or take a Lost Farmer Brewing live show or a curveball. We've been here from the beginning with the fans. Thank you to the fans. We've said that we believe that this is a playoff team, that it would be a roller coaster. It's kind of been like what we expected in a lot of ways. Horvat. I mean, it's really it's amazing to sit here in early March with only a few weeks left and to see they're kind of right where we thought they might be. Took a circuitous route to get there, but this is fun. This is the play-in round, as I mentioned on Twitter.
Yeah.
This is great. It doesn't always work out this way, and there are going to be some moments, but right now the Islanders are one of the sharper teams, 4-1-1, even with Barzal out. So there's a lot of things to look forward to, and this is going to be an exciting week.
No question about it, and there's more things to look forward to here at Hockey Night in New York at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY because Mr. Billy Jaffe of NESN and the NHL Network is going to join us. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
I don't want to hear it. It's over. I can't believe they fell short again.
Yeah, but they played so well. They made it to the semifinals 2 years in a row.
The semifinals aren't the cup. God damn it, I hate those Lightning.
They'll get another shot at it next year.
I don't even want to talk about it anymore, all right? They lost, okay? Let me just sit here and enjoy the one thing that makes me a little bit happy. This fresh, delicious, tasty, meaty, turkey-filled Blue Line Combo. I eat 3 every day to help keep me strong.
Hey, Donnie, can I have one of those?
Coming right up. Talk about a blast from the Blue Line.
Blue Line Deli and Bagels. Our goal is to make you a hero.
Miss the days of mixtapes and arcades? Love the taste of a bold IPA or maybe an ice-cold lager? There's a place where all of those magical things come together. Lost Farmer Brewing Company. At 63A East 2nd Street in the heart of Mineola, Lost Farmer combines a love of the 80s and a passion for quality beer to create brews that can only be described as gnarly, radical, and totally tubular. The retro vibe of the tasting bar will amp up your nostalgia while the blend of both local and exotic ingredients amp up your taste buds. Beer not your thing? Crack open a can of cider or sip a Chardonnay on the extended patio. Order up from the snack menu. You can even bring your own. If you're more of a homebody, pick up a growler to go or order online at lostfarmerbrewing.com. And for all of Long Island's hockey fans, Lost Farmer created the delicious Stable Shaker American Lager to celebrate the newly built UBS Arena at Belmont Park. Whether you're at the stable for a hockey game, concert, or a comedy show, you can find Stable Shaker by can and draft around the arena. So raise a cup to the next cup with Lost Farmer Brewery, the future of Long Island craft beer.
Thanks for giving some time to our sponsors. Ready to talk more Isles? The train rolls on right here on Hockey Night in New York.
And welcome back to Hockey Night in New York with Sean Cuthbert and Chris Botta, and we're really glad to be joined by the great analyst for NESN, NHL Network, and the top podcast, top 5-10 consistently in America, Morning Brew with Jaffe and Razor, Andrew Raycroft. How are you, Billy? It's Billy Jaffe. How are you, Billy?
I'm great. How are you guys doing?
Did you have a day of youth hockey today, my friend?
Today was just one game, but it's been a mega weekend of youth hockey. The voice is a little shot.
That's why I asked.
Yeah, I'm still wearing the colors, proud colors, Boston Junior Eagles. We had first weekend bots of our playoffs, and to say it's intense is a little true, and a lot of fun. No, went 3-0 this weekend, and in the semifinals now next weekend.
Congratulations. And I'm sure you are always kind to the referees, correct?
Actually, I am good to the yes, I am good to the
I know
refs.
it could get pretty intense over there.
I'm not so always good to my players. But I love the referees, having been one, and we need more of them. So no, listen, all kidding aside, it's been an amazing experience, Chris, coaching this team. Excuse me, and these kids and these people. It's been awesome, and they're working their butts off, and it's a fun experience.
I'm glad to hear it. I honestly don't know how you and Raycroft do it, a podcast a couple of times a week when the darn team wins all the time. Sean and I sit here. We were on this roller coaster of a season. Oh, they look pretty good under Lambert. Oh, God, no, they're not any good. Fire Lou. Oh, they got. I mean, I don't know how you guys do it. So thank you for joining us here. I was wondering your take on the back end of the Eastern Conference. We think it's about 6 teams, maybe 7 with Detroit if they find a way to win tonight, going for 2 spots, and where the Islanders fit in there. The Islanders' performance in Boston a week or so ago notwithstanding, how do you think the Islanders look in that race?
I've said, and I have to look at it like twice a day because everything's so close to remind who's in what spot.
Yeah,
I know that the Isles are up, but the Isles have played more games than everybody else. But I said to Razor the other day, rhetorically asking who's got the best goalie of the group, and it's Sorokin, right? I don't know if it takes a hockey analyst to figure that out, just looking at it. But the question or concern, of course, that look, I mean, you guys know infinitely more about the Isles than I do. I'm not going to, but is their consistent offense. And also just, where are they with the Barzell thing? Where, like, I look at this team and I'm like, they're going to be better. They're going to be good. They're going to be, and then they're not. And then they come through. I guess it's to your point, Chris. Yeah. Like one day they're great and the next day they're not. And that is a concern, I think, heading down the stretch. Like I haven't seen signs of they're going to be fine. With all that said, I can't tell you that I have seen that of any of the other teams in that group. Saw Buffalo the other day. I know they beat Tampa last night. We saw Buffalo in Boston. And notwithstanding that the Bruins are the Bruins right now, I'm just saying you thought they would come in with so much hunger, so much P&V, and they came in tepid, lukewarm at best, right? And you're like, yes, they're missing Tuck, and yes, they're missing Darlene, but I still expected, I guess, literally more fight in them. And it was 2-0 heading into the third. It was nothing. They got throttled 7-1. Ottawa's interesting to me. You know what? I kind of feel like Ottawa's with house money right now. I do. Even though they said, yeah, we want to be competitive and good. You know what? This team, I feel like they got house money. I think that they have been, I'm a huge fan of Brady Tkachuk. I think he gives them attitude that a lot of those lower teams in the wild card, Chris, don't have, like meaning that swagger, that youthful bliss. And I think that he's got it. And I'd like the Chychrun ad. If anything, you know what I think that does? I think that gives him a ginormous shot of we believe in you. and we went out and did something like that. And we haven't done a lot of that in the past. Yeah, we had an interesting offseason, but now all of a sudden nobody was talking about Ottawa getting Chychrun, and here he's there. So I think it gives them a lot. When it's all said and done, I don't believe in Florida. I just don't. Detroit is nice. Derek Lalonde's doing a nice job there. I don't think that look, Tyler Bertuzzi being traded to Boston, I think will be a tough ask for them without them, or making it without them. Pitt, to me, that's the only team. I think it's New York and Ottawa, and then Pitt I can't figure out, and I didn't really love what they did there in the trade deadline.
Yeah, Billy, how you doing? Sean here. I agree with
Sean.
you. Good to have you on. I was a little unsure about what Pittsburgh was doing as well, but just looking at the broad scope, now obviously a lot of players changed teams here at the deadline. Did any teams for you kind of stand out as winners and perhaps losers here at the deadline that kind of gave themselves a little bit of a boost heading into this stretch run before we get to the playoffs?
Well, winners, I'd say Boston, and it's not because I do all their games. But am I allowed to say bad words on here?
Sure,
no?
yeah, go for
Although
it.
I noticed you said P and V. Can you not say piss and vinegar on this?
Well, I didn't know. I mean, I was going to say, holy shit. I mean, if you look at what they did.
You can say whatever you want.
There you go. Orlov and Hathaway. I'm at my best when I say whatever I want. I usually get in trouble, but that's okay. I really like what they did. And it's not because, one of my employers is NESN, which
they lose like once every 6 weeks. It's okay that you can compliment
No,
them.
but what I'm saying, I love what they did at the deadline. I did. I loved how they addressed what are their potential weakness and maybe more importantly, perceived weakness. And now, because their perception of the Bruins in the last couple of years, and the Islanders actually, because it was true 3 years ago, throttled the Bees in that playoff series. That, I think, is what has gotten the Bruins to this point. I really think that, guys, because meaning to bring in Orlov, to bring in Hathaway, to bring in Bertuzzi. Yes, they had the injuries to Hall and Foligno, but to bring in those guys that are hard to play against, that is what they needed more of, and they did that. And Orlov, the joke here is he's playing like Bobby Orlov with 2 R's, and right now he's not going to keep up the offensive end of things. But on the other hand, he's such a good D. He didn't really get that as much credit in Wash. He's going to get it here right now, especially if they can help lead the Bruins to new heights. So I really like what they did there. I do like the Timo Meier acquisition in New Jersey. I think of it as we got one of the biggest fish out there, guys. That's how much we think of this team. I'm very impressed with what they've done on the road. I'm fully admitting, hand in the air, I wasn't really buying them for a long time. I can't tell you I'd put money on them, but I really like what they've done, and I think they're going to be a tough out in the first round. After that, we'll see. Those were the teams I thought that did real well. I think that in the East, there's other teams too. Everybody loaded. I actually think Toronto did well, except my question is, guys, did they do too much?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's going to be, I guess time will tell. I think that this is a team that was so searching for an identity, right? And they thought, Kyle Dubas said, we got our goalie and Matt Murray. He's going to help us. And then that's not happened. And then they get Samsonov to play well. Okay, not bad. And then all of a sudden, guys started doing less is more, and they started playing better team defense, and they started winning. But then all of a sudden, boom, they blow it up. I think you could have left it at O'Reilly, Achari, who, by the way, I think is a very good under-the-radar ad. And I think you could have left it at Shen. Mm-hmm. I do. Or maybe just Jake McCabe. I don't know. It seems like an awful lot there. This is an obvious comment. We'll figure it all out in 6 weeks, right? One of us will be smart, and the rest of us will be dummy analysts, right? But it's going to be interesting to see. I just wonder if they did too much. And out west, I actually like L.A. taking a chance on those guys. I do on Korpisalo and Gavrikov. I think they're a good team. I don't know if they're great. Edmonton and Ekholm, I liked it. I still am not buying that team with that goaltending, though.
Billy, that's fair. And, you brought up Boston, and they make these ads to shore up what already looks like obviously a juggernaut here this year, breaking records in the NHL, quickest to 100 points. And those teams you talked about before in that wild card race, that Boston's probably going to be the team that, maybe the Islanders are one of these teams they're going to have to worry about. So no better to have you on now for a little pre-scouting report. What has made this Boston Bruins team so good this year? I mean, they bring in the new coach in Montgomery. What's had that team just rattling off all these wins, especially because I think going into this season, not everybody was that high on Boston. Now you see them kind of proving the world wrong, and they're at the top.
Yeah. It's a multi-layered answer, but the first thing is depth. And how do you want to look at depth? Well, the Bruins have it in spades. They get Krejci back. So now everybody gets slotted into the right center spots. That's one depth. You get a healthy Nick Foligno. You get a healthy, Frederick had some injuries last year. You had a few D-men get injuries. You get all the Lindholm was injured last year after he came over. You get these guys healthy. And, we knew that Hampus Lindholm was good. We did. We knew he was good. We didn't know how good. He's not a 2. He's a 1B. He is. If he was with the Islanders, he'd be a 1B there. He's got Charlie McAvoy 1A, Hampus 1B, and the two of them toggle back and forth sometimes who's going to take that mantle for the night. And to be able to have one of those two guys on the ice for about, 48 of 60 minutes is pretty freaking good, right? And now you got Orlov who's playing 22 minutes a night. So in theory, you could have one of those three on the ice every second of a game now. Not bad, right? So depth, goaltending depth. Swayman, yes, a little struggle-ish early on. Had to get right. It was hurt a little too. But Linus comes here after a full year as a Bruin. People forget that Linus got pretty good down the stretch because in the playoffs, it wasn't as copacetic as, he was started out and it was up and down. But he came in there after a full off season of comfort and just a man on, it's not even a mission. He is so in control of the game every time he's on the ice this year that you can feel it, like watching even from the broadcast booth, you can feel that he's just in control. I'm no BS. He's given up one goal this year. One goal where we have said, what's the cliche? He'd like to have that one back, which is a fine way of saying that was a crappy goal, which is, one time. And it was a few weeks ago and that was it. So depth has been the biggest thing. Throw in Jim Montgomery and his different way of communicating with the team. And you have got an absolute like storybook season happening so far.
Two last ones for you, Billy. Bo Horvat, we thought he was a good acquisition at the time. Price was fair. What do you think he means to the Islanders? And did you like the move?
I did. Yeah, I like the move. I do. I'm a big Bo Horvat fan. Is he going to regularly be a 40-plus goal scorer? I don't know. But he's trending that way. I thought the deal was fair. In fact, I thought at first maybe the Islanders didn't give up that much, that they made out more. And completely, not knowing Atu Ratu. I hope I said that completely right.
Yeah.
I respect that. But, Van got what they felt they needed. Beauvillier, nice player, etc. But they get the other assets. And for the Islanders, I think it gets them back to that. All right, now we're really strong down the middle. I mean, I don't need to tell you guys this, but losing Barzal in that Boston game is just a killer. You think that he's going to rocket ship up and take off with the combination with Bo, and then it doesn't happen. And does that stunt Bo? No, it almost makes him more important if you think about it. At least they got Bo in there, and then they can help out. I like all the facets of his game. I love his leadership ability. And listen, man. I mean, how often we saw it actually with Hampus Lindholm bots, where he signed a contract, days after getting traded here without ever having been here. It's a gutsy thing to do, but obviously Bo is very, satisfied with what he heard of and what he knew of the island, and rightfully so. It's a wonderful place to play. I think it's a good addition, and I just keep wondering, is it enough to get him into the play? I thought maybe it could be, but now without Barzal and everything, I just wonder, I just wonder if it is.
But assuming Barzal comes back, because the team is saying week to week, and there seems to be some optimism about a return eventually.
And we believe everything teams say to us.
Of course, especially the PR departments. Of course I do. And then, I really liked what you said, and I could see The Athletic doing a feature on this about how the Islanders defeating Boston was kind of like this game changer for them and forced them to make moves. So I'm not going to ask for a preview or a prediction, but what do you think of the idea of an Islanders-Boston series this year? In a way, it might be a perfect way for Boston to just one more time show they're for real by beating the team that beat them.
Listen, you got Sorokin in net there, and it's cliche, but it's true. You get a great goalie, anything can happen. I think the Bruins' depth is better. I think the Bruins, Chris, have tried to forge. I think they've been able to forge an identity that the Islanders had, similarly a couple of years ago, and they don't have as much right now. And I think the depth of the Bruins, both on the front end and the back end, would be the difference. I do. They would be able to roll, the 4 and 3, the 4 lines in the 3 pair, and I think if you look at Charlie Coyle, if you're third line, listen, and Foligno's not coming back for a long time. I hope he can come back at some point, but he's playing so well. Hall's the question mark. But so let's assume Bertuzzi, Charlie Coyle, and Trent Frederick is your third line. That's going to be a tough match for the Isles. Anybody, forget the Isles. That's going to be a tough match, assuming that you're matching a certain line against the Bergeron line. But wait a second, let's not forget David Pastrnak with the checkmates and Krejci and Zacha. I just think when it's all said and done, that third line matchup would be significant. Whatever that third line ends up being for the Isles, you know what I mean? Whoever they wanted to match with it, it's a tough match, especially with deep pair, especially with a deep pair.
Well, Billy, I'm hoping that it comes to fruition and we see a little Bruins Islanders in the first round. But either way, absolute pleasure having you on the show. Really appreciate your time. Loved your work with Howie Rose when you're back in the broadcast here on Long Island. And it's still great to be able to watch on NHL Network. So thanks a lot, and hope to have you on down the road.
It's a pleasure to be on with you guys. Fun show, and to see Chris Botta and to have him give digs at the PR department is like a dream come true.
Thanks, Billy. I appreciate it.
Not at the Islanders PR department. I'm saying at a PR department. Yes. I'm saying.
Congrats to your team and the family and everybody. Okay, thanks for doing this.
Yeah, you got it. Anytime, guys. See you later.
Thanks a lot, Billy. Bye. Take care. All right, folks. That was the great Billy Jaffe of NESN and the NHL Network and his fantastic podcast like you were talking about.
Yeah, one of the best. Yeah, I learned so much riding on planes with him, talking to him before games, after games. A lot of the things that you might hear me say about back-to-backs and who has an advantage when and different things like that, a lot of it is from experience that he had and also from him talking to people for years preparing for these broadcasts.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So, Chris, you want to say a little something about Main Street Board Game Cafe before we break for Adam?
Yeah, that sounds good. Main Street Board Game Cafe in Huntington Village on Long Island's North Shore. Games for sale and for open play, food and drink, beer and wine, fun and friends. Bring the magic of phones down, eyes up, tabletop board games to your family. Our staff will help you find the right game, from old favorites to the hottest new releases. They have everything from strategic to easy party games. Get off your screens and unplug your game for a night your family will remember. Looking for meetups to join? Our Magic the Gathering, Dungeons and Dragons, or Game Night Live communities are welcoming for all. We also do parties and corporate events. Located at 307 Main Street in Huntington Village, go to mainstboardgamecafe.com for more information. Main Street Board Game Cafe. Find your crowd, unplug your game.
Excellent stuff, Chris. I actually had the pleasure of stopping in over there within the last week or two.
Great place,
met Neil. Great place. It was packed. All the tables were full.
I can't even call it a niche. Like he found something there, and it's special. And I wish we had one in town here.
Yeah, hopefully down the road. But great stuff over there. The food was excellent. So definitely stop on down to Main Street Board Game Cafe in Huntington Village. So we're going to take one more break here. We're spoiled with the guests we have on the show tonight. Adam Proteau of the Hockey News is going to join us. We're going to take that break. We'll be right back.
I don't want to hear it. It's over. I can't believe they fell short again.
Yeah, but they played so well. They made it to the semifinals 2 years in a row.
The semifinals aren't the cup. God damn it, I hate those Lightning.
They'll get another shot at it next year.
I don't even want to talk about it anymore, all right? They lost, okay? Let me just sit here and enjoy the one thing that makes me a little bit happy. This fresh, delicious, tasty, meaty, turkey-filled Blue Line combo. I eat 3 every day to help keep me strong.
Hey, Donnie, can I have one of those?
Coming right up. Talk about a blast from the Blue Line.
Blue Line Deli and Bagels. Our goal is to make you a hero.
Miss the days of mixtapes and arcades? Love the taste of a bold IPA or maybe an ice-cold lager? There's a place where all of those magical things come together. Lost Farmer Brewing Company. At 63A East 2nd Street in the heart of Mineola, Lost Farmer combines a love of the 80s and a passion for quality beer to create brews that can only be described as gnarly, radical, and totally tubular. The retro vibe of the tasting bar will amp up your nostalgia while the blend of both local and exotic ingredients amp up your taste buds. Beer not your thing? Crack open a can of cider or sip a Chardonnay on the extended patio. Order up from the snack menu, you can even bring your own. If you're more of a homebody, pick up a growler to go or order online at lostfarmerbrewing.com. And for all of Long Island's hockey fans, Lost Farmer created the delicious Stable Shaker American Lager to celebrate the newly built UBS Arena at Belmont Park. Whether you're at the stable for a hockey game, concert, or a comedy show, you can find Stable Shaker by can and draft around the arena. So raise a cup to the next cup with Lost Farmer Brewery, the future of Long Island craft beer.
Hey there, welcome back. We missed you too. Now kick up your feet and settle back in to Hockey Night in New York.
And we are back. It's Chris Botta with Sean Cuthbert. Really glad to be joined by one of the great talents and real gentlemen in hockey media and cultural media and everything else with the hockey news, with Full Press NHL and also his own Substack, Prototype at Substack.com, a great writer, and that's our friend Adam Proteau. How are you, Adam?
I'm great, Chris. How about you?
I'm doing great, thanks. You know, one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on, and that's 2 words. I'm going to ask you to run with it and tell us anything that you think that you know about him from your time with the Leafs, covering the Leafs, because the Islanders acquired him, and a lot of the people here, including myself, I'll speak for myself, don't know much about him. Pierre Engvall. What are the Islanders getting?
Well, Chris, I think they're getting a guy that is, probably still has room to grow his game. I mean, we watched him over the years here in Toronto, kind of blossom through the American League system and up through the rankings to the NHL stage, and he's looked really good at times. I mean, the thing about Pierre, I think everybody would tell you, great guy in the dressing room, great team guy. I know the Leafs didn't want to see him go really, so it's, I think, a compliment to his character. But he's not somebody that has, I think, what a lot of hockey people would see as a killer instinct out on the ice. I think he's a big body, big frame. He was the biggest player on the Leafs, I think, at 6'5", and was smooth. I mean, swift. They called him Seabiscuit or Biscuit for Seabiscuit the racehorse, right? Mm-hmm. So, that was what stood out for them. And I think what stood out for people too was he does have the ability to contribute offense, I think. But where it started to go wrong with him with the Leafs was that his contract is going to be due next season as an unrestricted free agent, and the Leafs really don't have the structure right now where they can afford a bunch of guys who would be making $3 or $4 million a year. That's probably where Pierre Engvall's salary will be next year, I would imagine. And so I think at that stage they made the move to get him out and recoup a draft pick back. I think that was a pretty good move for both sides, to be honest. Now Engvall will get on Long Island the opportunity to be that 20 to 25 goal scorer consistently every year. And people think he has the wherewithal to do it in terms of his skill set. But I think people wonder where that edge is. I think people that are looking for a big guy to play up to his size, I think people would probably say Pierre doesn't really play up to his size, and he can kind of get a little lost in the mix out there at times. But he does have talent. He is going to help the Islanders for sure, and he's a super nice guy as well. Guys. So I know in working with teams, you don't necessarily cheer for teams per se. You cheer for people, and I think a guy like Pierre Engvall is a guy that you cheer for as a person.
Really well said. Do you see him as a Lou Lamoriello player? And it's possible that Lou said, yeah, I want him, and that Toronto knew this was the team to go and get a third-round pick for him?
Yeah, I do think so. I think Lou, in his time with the organization, he knew what the cupboard base was in terms of assets and long-term assets, and sometimes, he'll push the needle, as we all know, guys. He'll be bold, and he certainly did that with Bo Horvat. But other times, I think he just lets the drama of the trade deadline play out and find his own pressure points where he wants to move. And so when he saw the chance to get a young player to not take anybody else off the roster, to acquire him, and then be in a position to offer him a raise, stick around if things go well in the next 6 weeks and in the playoffs. I can see Pierre Engvall being a part of that team for the long term for sure. It's just, teams are going to ask themselves, is the 15 to 20 goal scorer what we're getting, or is it the 20 to maybe 30 goal scorer that we think he could be? And I'm not sure that, a huge long-term contract would apply. Is my guess. I would think they would get somewhere in the area of maybe a 2-year deal, kind of keep him in that kind of mid to low tier of the NHL pecking order, and keep him, still up and near the top 6, maybe top 9 forwards, but give him some chances, allow him maybe to work with the Islanders and kind of develop that killer instinct. I just don't know that you can expect it, because everybody has been expecting it in Toronto, and it just ultimately wasn't there.
Hey, Adam, Sean here. Yeah, I actually wanted to key right in on that. You talk about the fact that he may have some more room to grow, and you look at how top-heavy that Toronto Maple Leafs team is and all the talent that they have. And was it a situation where maybe, given all those guys, the Tavarises, the Matthews of the world, just didn't afford Engvall the chance to maybe play in a higher role in that team to even afford him the chance to show whether or not he has that 20, 25 goal scoring potential?
Oh, yeah, that's a great point, Sean. I think, the Leafs' commitment to those core 4 players, basically guarantees, the top line, and then another one, and then you add in another guy like Ryan O'Reilly to the mix. You see a guy like Michael Bunting have a lot of success. At that point, it does become a money squeeze, because when you do go all in on your key core talent, you have to make that up somehow in paying guys average or below average salaries, guys on 1-year deals. You think of the guys that have been through here lately. I mean, Jason Spezza was here for a while. Wayne Simmons is still technically with the organization, though he's not playing. His last days may already been played, but you can see how guys kind of get put in the system to churn in and around the big players, and if they don't do at least what the team has for a bare minimum, then they leave themselves open for discussion. And I was a little bit surprised at the deadline, guys, that a guy like Alex Kerfoot, I mean, he's had a pretty miserable year, but he's not a bad player. I just don't know that his salary, $3.5 million, was what he should have gotten, given his low output on offense. And I think they all kind of squeezed each other at the top in terms of the wing position. We always knew what the forwards were going to be for the most part. And so, yeah, guys like Engvall got squeezed. They've got some Marlies that came up and down. Joey Anderson, who was just traded to Chicago in the Sam Lafferty, Jake McCabe trade. He was there. So I think, you just have to see what they do with their entire lineup, but specifically what it is in terms of surrounding those core 4 players with talents.
Did Engvall get any time on the special teams with the Leafs at all? Maybe, I look at it, and like Chris, not knowing a lot about him before he came over, you look at his speed. Is he a kind of guy that maybe they use on the PK that could be a little bit of a pest with that speed that he has, or was he more primarily a 5-on-5 guy?
No, I think he definitely was a penalty killer. Believe he was on the second unit here, and I think he had worked hard at being a smart type of guy. For the most part, he does make good decisions with the puck. He is a very good forechecker. He just isn't always able to finish on the goal scoring end. So I know that's what a lot of fans gravitate to in terms of a player's worth, but. I should say, Sean, you want somebody there that can come in, especially in the playoffs, when just you want to be, what's the word I'm looking for? Responsible enough not to take any penalties, and those are the type of guy I think that Engvall is. I don't think he's going to take a dumb penalty. I don't think he's going to take, a reaction penalty. He's a pretty low energy guy, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean he doesn't. Get Darcy Tucker bug out eyes and start going crazy after people. You're never going to get that type of on your sleeve pack, aggressiveness from Pierre. He's just not that type of guy.
Last one from us, but it's a big one. Adam, can you help us try? So Detroit has just lost in Philadelphia after losing yesterday to the Islanders, so I'm taking them out of the equation. You're out, Detroit. Sorry. So that leaves 6 teams, if you include Washington and I do, for 2 wild card spots in the East. Crystal ball, never mind those pesky games in hand. So the Islanders got a couple of games. All that aside, can you make any sense of where this might be shaking out, my friend?
Well, I mean, in terms of the wild card race, Chris, I think you're looking at the teams. It's not only just enough to get into that wild card spot, but you really don't want to get into that second wild card spot, right, the bottom one, because that's a date with a steamroller named the Boston Bruins in the first round. You'll probably get Daryl Sutter said that famously about Colorado last year. He's like, why do we want to play them? It'll be 5 games and over. So I think in my mind, the teams that I like, I still think Florida has an outside shot of getting it right. My team I really think is going to do well are the Buffalo Sabres guys. They, to me, have finally got those kind of cornerstone, maybe not generational players necessarily, but maybe so in some of their defensemen. And even with a goaltending group that isn't going to win a Vezina, they've been able to beat teams that a lot of people thought they might not. So I think the Sabres are really going to be one of those 2 playoff wildcard teams. And after that, I mean, the Islanders for sure, I think, will be in a fight right down to the bottom bitter end. I think if they didn't lose Lamoriello would probably fire Lane Lambert on the spot, for giving up or waving the white flag. But I also think the Ottawa Senators and the Detroit Red Wings are, still have sniffing around the periphery, I guess, of the playoffs for me. But really Ottawa, and I think, who did I just say? Buffalo. To me, they are really jumping out and asserting themselves under their head coach, and I just think it's finally their time after a long time of misery in Western New York.
And Adam, last one real quick from me, a little bit of fun with this one before we let you go. But is this the year that the Toronto Maple Leafs finally win a playoff round?
Yeah, it is funny around here, Sean. When people are crying their eyes out, they're laughing. So I do think the Leafs are in a better position ultimately to get out of the first round. I think management anticipates and targets that they're going to be playing the Tampa Bay Lightning. So the team you're probably going to take on, and I look at Tampa Bay, and again, you never want to count out the Tampa Bay Lightning, right? I mean, they've earned the benefit of the doubt. But I think that the changes that Toronto's made to deepen the team, and the inability of Julien Brisebois, the Lightning's GM, at making real good moves. That Jeannot move, with all those draft picks, guys, that was absolutely bananas for that type of player. Yeah. But I guess it spoke to the desperation that I think they've run out of a lot of their depth so far. So I think it's. I think it's an opportunity for the Leafs to finally step up and get themselves through those games, not allow Vasilevsky to steal the last 2.5 games of the playoffs as he did last year. And once they do, and if they do get past that first round, again, they'll probably have to face the Boston Buzzsaw Bruins, right? It's not going to be easy just to get out of that division. So I do think if I were guessing a man today, I would bet that the Leafs would win in the first round and lose in the second.
Fair enough, Adam, and I'm with you. I think guys like O'Reilly and Schenn were the right flavor of guys for Toronto to finally get out of that first round. But I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. Really appreciate your time, and hope to have you on again soon, and have a great rest of your night.
Yeah, guys, and just so I'm clear, I am not an apparition. I know it might look like it in my picture here on the screen, but just bad lighting in my apartment, unfortunately.
Oh, that's funny.
Fair enough.
Thanks so much for doing this, Adam.
Man, my pleasure, guys. Have a good night.
All right,
Take care,
Adam.
bud. Bye.
Take care. All right, that was Adam Proteau of the Hockey News. Great little spot there. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I've been so focused on the Islanders and whether they can make it or not. I haven't really even looked at it, but if Tampa, unless they can really figure it out, that is interesting that Toronto, I would consider them a favorite in that series, right? And
I think they finally brought in the right guys. And maybe, like Billy Jaffe was saying, maybe 2 moves too many, a couple moves too many, but they finally brought in some guys who have that playoff grit to them. You know what I mean? Like you can throw Tavares and Matthews and Nylander out there, score plenty of goals and stuff like that, but they're not those playoff guys. And I think that's why Tampa gave up all they did in that deal, because the guy they picked up from Nashville, Janot, right? That's how you pronounce it. He's tailor-made for the playoffs, a guy like him. Yeah. He's a greasy player. He's not scoring as many goals this year as he did last year, but he's the kind of guy who's going to, win your battles in a tight playoff game and probably pot in the odd goal or two here or there. So, and
to something that Billy Jaffe said, he is right in that anybody trying to get into the 8th spot and so this idea of having to face Boston. So maybe that did influence Detroit. Like, what are we doing here, right? Washington is Washington has been the anti-Islanders in terms of just being like, we'll start shedding and because we need to start rebuilding eventually, which is, by the way, is what a lot of Islander fans have asked for, and I understand that, and the Islanders didn't do. But Washington has done that, and we'll see if they hang in. It appears that perhaps Ted Leonsis, the owner, has told Brian McLennan, the general manager, that that's okay. You have my endorsement to do this. I'm not going to fire everybody. I could see Peter maybe getting fired after this year if they don't make it. But the one team, though, that I have no problem with them trying to get into that 8th spot, and they would have reason to feel like they had a chance, happens to be the team that we do a show about. So when we talked 6 weeks ago, I guess that was, about it's kind of the old Herm Edwards, you play to win the games, you don't quit now, you make those moves, and they made the Horvat trade. Yeah, I mean, you owe it to yourselves in this group to get into that spot. And if it's the second wild card and you play Boston, so be it. Everyone will pick Boston to win in 4 or 5. You hang that on the wall, you put Sorokin in the net, and you see what happens, and you have fun. And I understand they'd be prohibitive on the drugs. I understand. No, I would not bet on the Islanders probably unless the odds were really, really juicy. Right. But you go in there and you beat them once before, a different team, a different era, just 3-4 years ago. But, the Islanders would have reason to have some confidence, to have a belief system. We don't have to. The fans don't have to. The critics don't have to. But they would have that. So if the Islanders wound up with the second wild card spot, I'll sign up for that right now. Sign me up too. And speaking of those teams that they're vying for these final 2 wild card spots for, why don't we start getting into what's on tap?
And now, it's time for What's on Tap, a look ahead at the Islanders' upcoming schedule.
That's right, folks. It's time for What's on Tap, starting with Tuesday. Huge game. This could end up being one of the biggest games of the season from here on out for the New York Islanders. The Buffalo Sabres come to town to UBS Arena, and I've said it on shows past here. That's one of the teams that I'm kind of worried about as far as being one of the teams that could supplant the Islanders in one of those wild card spots. So you really got to win this game against the Buffalo Sabres. So you have that Tuesday. Thursday, they go into Pittsburgh to hopefully, at least keep things somewhat neck and neck with them, even with the games in hand. And then Saturday, the Washington Capitals come to town, who may or may not still be in the race. But look, they're still mathematically there. There's still going to be a problem with a guy like Alex Ovechkin on the team. So 3 huge games coming up for the New York Islanders that are going to have a heavy influence on where they stand in this playoff race. Chris Botto, what do you say? Well, one thing that I want to say is that Buffalo, unfortunately for them, has a game on Monday night.
at
It's a
home
shame.
against Edmonton. So to the folks who rightfully so say, boy, it stinks the Islanders have all these games in hand, one of the ways that these teams are going to make up this distance that the Islanders don't have to
True.
worry about anymore because they played there 65 or however many it is,
Right.
is they're going to be playing more games. And one of those is against Edmonton. Perhaps that's a game Buffalo. If Buffalo, I guess like all these teams, including the Islanders, have been impossible to predict lately, so nothing would surprise me. But it is an advantage, a small advantage to the Islanders that
Sure.
Buffalo is coming into this must-win game for both teams on Tuesday, but having played the night before. Pittsburgh, I mean, it's been kind of funny. I mean, those 2 Islander victories I already mentioned before. We'll see what happens there. This is a little bit of a different Pittsburgh team because Ron Hextall threw the roster through the blender a little bit, made some additions, a little more mobility on the defensive side, but also probably weaker defensively. So there's that. When we look at this playoff race, like right now, the trending hot teams besides the Islanders for 1-1 is Ottawa. And Buffalo.
Yep.
The advantage that the Islanders have is that most of the Islanders in this Islanders group have been there. And those other teams are teams that are there every year. They've been, is this going to be the year? Especially Buffalo. Ottawa really started once they signed Giroux, could this be the year they make the leap? History usually proves that those teams don't make that leap yet, that it won't be Ottawa's time. But until Ottawa loses a game, I can't say that right now.
Yeah.
So right now, those are the teams that I fear the most.
And I think that's rightfully so. Now, how well do the Islanders have to do this week in order to keep their dreams of making the playoffs alive here?
They have to win them all.
All right.
I mean, 5 points. And,
Okay.
Washington is a game they should win at home. I think they win Tuesday. Pittsburgh, I don't know what's going on there.
Yeah.
But is it me or every time I go on Twitter, Hextall is trending? And no, it's not just Leia. I feel terrible about that. It's Pittsburgh fans going after Ron. And I always find it a little funny because he never played for them. He played for hated rivals.
Yeah.
So when things go bad, he's a bright guy. He's a good person. I understand it hasn't worked out well this year for them, but he is constantly trending. And when you look it up, it's fans talking about that they want to run him out of town. So I can't figure out the Penguins right now. To answer your question, no, the Islanders, they have to at least get 4 of these 6 points, and ideally 5, and those are gettable.
And I think ideally, if you wanted to nitpick those points, you're taking 2 against Buffalo and Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and we should point out even strength.
I would cede the 2 to Washington if you got to be choosy, right?
Yes, even strength. By the way, again, you 6 weeks ago asked for the Islanders to at least get more games to overtime and shootout, and
It's about bloody time.
They've done that.
They have. Did that Minnesota game? No, I mean, I know we don't really have the time, but that giveaway that Noah Dobson had in that game, I mean, he probably cost the team an extra point in that one.
Yeah.
Because, as we know, 0 for 5 in the shootout, which is...
And Lane Lambert's reaction when he was asked about the shootout, he just... And it is true. It isn't something you can coach. He said the guys have to
try harder.
They have to keep on working at it, and they have to score. He was irritated, not at the question. He was just irritated, period.
Yeah.
And I can't blame him. I don't know. The only way that probably ends is with Sorokin, stopping, say, 6, and the Islanders eventually getting 1. But they've done that. They've done that so far too. It's unfortunate.
It is, to say the least. All right, Ed, let's go right into the hero of the week. That's right, folks. When you hear this song, that means it's time for the hero of the week, brought to you by the Blue Line Deli and Bagels. Half price hero, which this week is the Deli, featuring grilled roast beef, sauteed onion, mushrooms, and fresh mozzarella on a toasted garlic hero. Stop on in to the Blue Line Deli and Bagels Huntington location, mention Hockey Night New York, and get half off the Deli. So Chris Botta, who is your hero of the week?
The captain, Anders Lee.
All right.
He has his moments, his weeks where sometimes I go, wow, when they look to move forward in this maybe 2.0 version of this group, would they ever consider moving him on a pretty good contract as he gets older? And then he has games, and by the way, I don't mean to say like he's that inconsistent, but he has plenty of them, enough so that the answer is no. Where he doesn't so much carry the team on his back offensively, but emotionally. You see he's at the center of a lot of this.
Right.
And when they need a big goal, it's Brock Nelson, of course. Horvat's been chipping in, and Lee's every bit a part of it. So every once in a while, I just say, yeah, what's up with Anders Lee? And then he has a game, and it's just like, Anders Lee plays on my team for the next 5-6 years. I don't care. Go ahead.
There you go. 2 big goals against the Wings yesterday. My hero of the week, I'm going to go back to Zach Parise. He had the opening goal yesterday against the Wings, had an assist on Nelson's beautiful goal against the Jets last Saturday. That nice little individual move in front of the net there. But Parise makes the chip play on the boards to get Nelson the puck. And look, we've been singing Zach's praises all season long. I mean, pretty much since he's gotten here with the work ethic that he's brought to the team and the leadership, and he's still chugging along. And I went with Zach Parise. So there you go. Anders Lee, Zach Parise, your heroes of the week.
I'm trying to look up Pierre Engvall's career in the shootout.
Okay.
All of a sudden,
he might go first for the next one.
All of a sudden, it hit me like, maybe that's like something that we. Unfortunately, I can't easily.
Well, is he a guy who even gets in there with all the names that team has, right?
He's never got
right, unless it goes to like round 5 or 6, right?
Hey, if somebody on the Twitch chat can look up, because my eyes aren't that great, plus I try to pretend to listen to Sean when he talks, so I don't like to be rude. So
what a bastard.
If somebody could look up on the chat Pierre Engvall's career shootout prowess or lack thereof, that would be great to let us know.
And speaking of those of us in the chat there, why don't we go into Questions Brewing?
It's time for Questions Brewing, brought to you by Lost Farmer Brewing Company.
Eddie, Jay, how we doing back there, fellas?
I'm doing great.
Welcome back to the studio.
That's
man.
what I was. It's good
Jay,
to be
how
back.
you been, man? It's been a little while. Thumbs up. He's good to go.
The road shows were great at Lost Farmer,
Yeah.
but there's nothing like keeping Jay company here on Sunday nights.
There you go. All right, so why don't we fire away here? What do we got?
We're gonna start off with Mike. Mike says, with Trotz being the new GM in Nashville, do you think he'll do Lou a solid and take Josh Bailey off our hands? After all, Barry loved Josh when he was here.
I don't know about that question, but it's so much has gone on that I think I did have him all the way down my list of possible topics. But congratulations to Barry Trotz, new general manager of Nashville.
Yeah,
that's where his home is. I'll just repeat what I said on this show 2-3 months ago, that if I'm the owner of the team or the general manager team, I want Barry Trotz to coach my team. I don't want him to be general manager. It doesn't mean that he can't make a good general manager, and I'm sure he's going to surround himself with everybody who knows the CBA frontwards and backwards and will do his contract. That's usually how it works. My only thing is, and he's not going to coach too. I'd be stunned by that, because I think we've seen that that hasn't happened now in a long, long time, and should not. And but I am happy for him. He had said, even before he took the Islanders job, that's something he would like to move into. It's a lot of coaches' dreams to be the GM, to be the one doing the firing and hiring instead of the other way around. And he achieved his dream. And he earned it with Nashville. He earned it as an original guy, as a close confidant of Poyle. It all worked out. So good for him. Could he do business with the Islanders someday? Yes. Will he take Bailey off of their hands? I don't see any chance of that happening.
What do you got, Ed? I'm with you, Chris.
The next one's from Mr. Tom Boyle. With the Strangers' recent struggles, could you see the Islanders passing them?
Listen, as much as we would all love to see it, I let's just focus on getting into the playoffs and hanging on to one of those wild card spots. I mean, they're doing great work without Matt Barzal in the lineup. They've kind of changed their style a little bit. They're playing a little more tight, a little tighter defensively. And they're kind of getting back to preventing goals. I think we're finally seeing the Adam Pelech we've been waiting for to get back after his injury. And, so far so good with Barzal being out, and with all the competition that we just talked about tonight surrounding those wild card spots. I think that's got to be your main focus. If the Rangers start to plummet for one reason or another, and they got too many chefs in the kitchen maybe, and they have all these stars and they're not meshing well, and they go on a little bit of a losing streak here, I'm all for it. Let's get out of that that last spot, right? Let's avoid Boston until the conference final, right?
The thing about the standings though is like they can change really quickly, right? So like right now, like was it 7 points? So it looks like that's gettable, right?
Right.
But if you were to do a what's on tap for the New York Rangers, they play at Montreal on Thursday, and that's a game that they would I would expect that they win.
Sure.
But now. You want to talk about who do you want to root for?
Sure.
Guess who they got this weekend?
Who they got?
Buffalo and fucking Pittsburgh.
Well. I guess everybody's going to be quietly rooting Rangers.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
And where this gets difficult is when all these teams play each other, which we are seeing.
Right, the 3-point games and all that. Yeah, which is why the Islanders just got to keep winning and hope the chips fall in their favor. And they got a little help over the weekend. I think, what was it? Might have even been last night or 2 nights ago, where you had a bunch of those teams in the race playing games, and a lot of them lost. Not everybody, but you got a couple losses here and there. So the Islanders have been getting help. So just keep doing your job, and hopefully they continue to get a little bit of help here, maybe from the Rangers this coming weekend. But let's just focus on getting to the dance. What do you got?
And Zab09 asks, what has been the catalyst for the Islanders' better play in their end?
Well, I think there's always when you lose your number one center, your most explosive player, there is a tendency to be more mindful. Do I think that Lane Lambert and John McClain and Doug Cooter are drawing up? Okay, we gotta really protect the goalies. No, probably not so much with this team, but I do think I think they're inspired by let's do this without our guy. It works for short bursts. Probably most famously, correct me if I'm wrong, for this franchise, maybe it happened in the early 2000s as well, or late 2000s, but Pierre Turgeon was out of the series, and Ray Ferraro and the Islanders beat Pittsburgh, right? Like they were able to do that for 2 weeks. They won 4 out of 7 games. So it is something that happens short term, and I do think there's been a little bit of a tightening of the screws and more of just a conscientious play toward defense. They're still lacking some goal scoring, but if there's any theory to it, it's that, because the goaltending continues to be superb, including Mr. Varlamov.
Yeah, had a great outing last weekend, and Sorokin, as you say, has been great as well. But yeah, you look at this past week and the results. I mean, the most goals they gave up in any of these games was 1 goal. And the defense has helped, but, a lot of it still stems from the goaltending. But yeah, they've clamped down a little bit. They've looked better, like I noted before. Pellick's looked a lot better. And I think Lambert made a good move by splitting him and Pulock up and spreading out the wealth, if you will, among the defensemen. And I think you're seeing some better outings there from Romanov. And look, I mean, I think the focal point for that defensive group from here on out is going to be Dobson and Aho, right? And, I think most people are looking at those guys for being most guilty for having some mishaps in the defensive end and coughing up pucks and the turnovers and stuff like that. So as long as that can be minimized, then I think you're going to continue to see more results like this where they're only giving up maybe 1 to 2 goals a game, because you have a guy like Sorokin back there. When there is a breakdown, he's usually bailing them out. So far, so good over this last stretch, and hopefully this is something they can keep rolling and roll right into the playoffs with.
Trottier19 asks, what happened to Pulock's offense and Dobson's defense? Both have regressed big time. It's so odd.
Yeah, we actually, I think it was last week at Lost Farmer we talked about this. Yeah, we did. We joked about Pulock, basically all of his cannon shots kind of going everywhere but the net, right? And look, I don't know if it's interesting, because Pulock has kind of taken a backseat to Dobson as far as being the number one offensive defenseman on the team, the trigger man, and maybe that's influenced Pulock to be a little more responsible defensively and watch out for that side of his game, and Dobson's kind of taken over. And then at the same token, Dobson's still a young guy. He's still, 22, 23 years old. And I think it was Brian Compton last week on the show was saying, it takes a long time for defensemen to develop, and especially the defensive side of the game. And, he noted how quickly Taves picked it up. But you remember, he started, what was he, 24, 25 already? When
started later.
Yeah, exactly.
Coming out of Quinnipiac. Dobson, he spoiled us by being so sound defensively early. Mm-hmm. So if there's been a little bit of a step back, I think that's to be almost expected, but that's not a concern of mine at all.
Yeah, I think ultimately you're going to see Dobson round out his game, and he's going to be a top pair and defenseman for this team for a long time.
All right, next question is from DTMR. Why don't goal announcements at UBS include the player's goal number, just the name? Even for multiple goal games, no second goal of the game. Not even a first NHL goal. Is this a Lou thing? I never realized that.
Yeah, I actually
They
did
do
notice
it
that.
everywhere else.
I did notice that, usually you're right, like his 13th goal of the season, so-and-so. But, yeah, I did notice that it was just this guy scored the goal, assisted by this guy. Thank you very much. What do you think?
I think it is a Lou thing, so I can't say I know.
Yeah.
But nothing like that seems to happen by accident. It doesn't go on anywhere else. And usually the public address announcers, even to this day, they'll have a sheet and it'll actually say so-and-so, and they might even write in his 37th of the season or whatever. An example, if it is so petty that that's a Lamorello thing, and I say if, right?
Right.
An example of where that's unfortunate is when you then get to kind of a season milestone like Horvat, a 40th, a 50th, Lee, Nelson. That would be a shame. But I can't say I know anything about it. I will reach out during the week, maybe see if I can get that answer. And if true, well, if they're not doing it, if they never do it, and because I haven't been as many games as you, then that's just wrong, and they should correct it. And if they're not doing it on purpose because somebody has some principle, philosophy, why not to do it, that's just silly and stupid, and I'd be embarrassed for them. So that's all I can say.
An
on
interesting
that front,
question, nonetheless.
Yeah, great. And can you confirm all that?
I definitely noticed it recently, maybe once or twice. Now, granted, I am not paying attention to every PA announced goal. You know what I mean? But it did strike me. I said, it's interesting how he didn't say how many goals he had in the season, because usually they do.
Has it always been the same voice? The only other thing I could think of is that maybe a sub steps in for a game,
I
chokes
don't know.
a little bit, doesn't get it.
Honestly,
right.
I'm not really paying attention to it, but it is an interesting question
We'll
nonetheless. Yeah.
This is going back towards the Minnesota game you guys were talking about.
Okay.
So MJ Beckman is talking about, we didn't discuss the shootout loss to Minnesota. Would Lou be wise to hire Franz Nielsen as a coach just to teach him his unstoppable backhand roof shot?
I'm sure that...
Well, I just don't think you could teach it.
Right.
That's the thing.
That's an execution thing.
Yeah, because you could go there and, right, you personally, Sean Cuthbert, could go there and say, here's what Franz did.
Right.
But there was just something about him doing it.
Right.
We see this with some of these other guys too. Like, but only Zuccarello would be a good example. He comes down, he seems to get you could tell the goalie's like, I'm not going to open my legs. I'm not going to open my legs. 5-0 goal.
Right.
Like some guys just have that thing. So Zuccarello didn't score against the Islanders either, though, so it didn't work for him. But it doesn't work. It's amazing. Even these guys who do it incredibly well, like Franz do, like they approach 50%.
At this point, if 5 shootouts in, I think it's more luck than anything else that they're 0-5. Now, granted, are there any? Is there an abundance of natural snipers on the team? Not exactly, but like they still know how to take a breakaway and beat an NHL goaltender. It's just not happening. And look, if the Islanders were 5-0, I would still say get rid of the shootout. It's there.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know how many eggs you got to put into that basket. But I mean, I guess you have to say if they had won at least 2 of those shootouts, they'd be looking even better right now to hang on to one of those spots.
If I was going to have, and I'm usually the last person to say, bring in an alumni, if I was going to have anybody address some of the Islanders, most likely to say the shootout and maybe some goal scoring, the guy who I would, and they probably haven't because they draw a line between it and they also want to be respectful to their coaches. And sometimes I have a little fun with this fella and I'm critical, but like I would have Butch Goring come down because Butch Goring, when it comes to scoring, and we have fun, obviously, when he talks about Top Shelf and all the different things that he
Toy department.
Thank you. He is really brilliant when it comes to those kind of things. Like he knows the game. He's also been playing it for more than 6 years, been around it. And so if I was going to maybe even just loosen things up, I'd have Butch Goring come down for a little shootout practice.
Okay.
He has a lot of very strong opinions on how guys get in too deep, how you got to make a move. And I'd let him just run it, if only to have fun with it, make for a great broadcast.
Sure.
And I would just have him go down there for 15 minutes, some practice, and oversee a shootout practice, just to loosen the guys up a little bit too, because Butch would have a lot of fun with it.
All right, Ed.
Another one from Enzab. Why do the Islanders refuse to put in their best shooters on the power play? although Pollock hasn't scored much, is still one of the best shots on the team.
Well, that still comes down to it's not just taking the shots in the power play, but you talk about power play quarterbacks and guys in their positions and running the power play and moving the puck and all that. And it's not just, okay, who's got the best shot here? I mean, especially on that, that back position on the defensive side. And I don't know. I don't know if I give the Islanders
I know it's not the point, but didn't Pollock score like a week or two ago? Like, I know that's how few there are now.
Right.
Like he did get one.
Yeah. Look, I can't sit here and say, look, if the Islanders did this, then I can guarantee you they're going to score more goals in the power play. It hasn't worked as well, and it started. We've talked about this too. It got better when Horvat showed up, and then Barzal got hurt, and it kind of went back in the tank, right? And it's still a little bit of a work in progress. Although they did score a power play goal yesterday, so I think it's gotten a little bit better. Look, it's going to be scored by committee with this power play because you don't have that Ovechkin, you don't have that Tarasenko, you don't have that guy that you can just Zibanejad to just unload, shot after shot. And they have to work it a little bit differently and try to find that, getting the goaltender moving, from side to side or whatever it is. I do think that they should be shooting more in general and just when you have guys like Lee and Horvat on this team, they park themselves in front of the net. Let them, pick up the trash in front and just get some dirty, filthy goals. I think that's what they should do. But again, easier said than done because you have these, professional grade goaltenders that know how to gobble up pucks and they're not giving up a lot of rebounds. But
we've had so many great guests all season on this show, and honestly, a keeper for me was Billy pointing out, which honestly I hadn't really thought about, but this idea that Boston is using the lessons from losing that Islander series in the moves that they made. And by the way, he wouldn't say that if he didn't think it or know it or feel it or whatever. So that goes a long way. But one of the standouts for me early was when we had Ray Ferraro on after Barzal signed, because he knows Barzal, and we talked about the offense, and he said, man, he had some sort of analogy to pushing a car uphill when you don't have enough,
right?
And I think even though the Islanders scored pretty often early, and the defense was enjoined into play. Remember that back in the early,
yes,
all
sir.
that stuff. So, but now we're here, right? Like these final less than 20 games going to be a grind to the finish. It's everything that we thought it would be. The scoring is going to be hard to come by. They have these two incredible goalies, and this is where it's going to be fun. But it is going to be a grind the rest of the way out. One of the things that I was thinking before, going back to Ottawa, if I'm an Islander fan, of course I'm an Islander fan, I host a fucking podcast, and I work for the team, so I don't know why I would say it.
I love the inner monologue of Chris Bob.
We Islander fans, you want to keep an eye on Ottawa. You want to see Ottawa lose a game or two in the next couple of days.
Sure.
Because it's possible they're a juggernaut. We can't rule that out. If they could just slow down, they'll just go back to their place, which is the team that's one more year away. Buffalo, I kind of feel that way, but that's who I'm looking at right now. But this is going to be a grind. It's going to be fun every game. That first game with Horvat, we said you can't miss. You can't miss any of these games anymore the rest of the way. This is fun.
Absolutely. Ed, you got anything else?
This is fun, darn it.
You look like you're having fun, Chris.
I was concerned when Jaffe first came on. He sounded so tired and out of it. I'm like, but then he
sprung up. He sprung up.
He was youth hockey all weekend. I'll do it.
Well, we've discussed shootout problems and power play problems.
Some new names in the chat today. Nice.
Yeah, there are some new names. Why not discuss penalty shots? Why have the Isles been so brutal on penalty shots? Shouldn't shooters have the advantage most of the time?
The same reason why they struggle in the shootout. I mean, it's the same thing. It's just a different title.
Yeah, I mean, we had to scratch every surface, every reason.
All right, what do you got?
Thing I've always just been fascinated by as a non-knowledgeable hockey person is that somebody having a breakaway in a game is so much different than a shootout.
Absolutely.
And you know this probably as a player, you could speak to it. I think the guy doesn't have as much time to think.
Exactly.
And the goalie doesn't have as much time to set up. But it is a totally different thing.
100%.
What's his name? Who's the guy? Grabner, who famously he said he'd have 80 goals, right?
Right.
Claude Lapointe back in the day was always, he had so many breakaways on shootouts and couldn't score. All that said, though, we see guys routinely pot goals on breakaways, but not be able to do it in the shootout. It's a different animal.
No, absolutely. Ed, what else you got?
We're back to shootouts.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, you got to have something else here.
Is there anything else?
There's a not really. Well, there's an extra tidbit to this one, which is a good question.
Okay.
So this was, why the Islanders suck in shootouts, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And Lambert doesn't have Brock in his last shootout. What the fuck?
Okay.
I mean, that's a good question.
Listen,
why isn't Brock Nelson in
Brock
the shootout?
Nelson's in my top 3 every time. But, you go through as many shootouts as you do, and you don't have success. I mean, I don't blame a guy for shuffling the deck and just seeing what he gets. And look, he sees these. I'm sure they practice breakaways every now and then, or, penalty shots, if you will, in practice for this very reason, to squeeze an extra point out of a game, right? And he probably sees some guys that are looking pretty good. Maybe they're getting 1 or 2 past Varley or past Sorokin in practice, and he thinks they're feeling it, and he's like, all right, have a go, and let's see how you do. And it hasn't panned out for them, but unless Lambert is putting out Scott Mayfield, Romanov, and pick your bottom 6 forward out as your top 3 every shootout, I'm not really going to give Lambert a hard time for the 3 guys that he picks every time.
Holmstrom is an example of he's making a little bit of a reach because he's got a feel, or he scored in Bridgeport, or you see those once in a while. But I do agree, you want Brock out there. Yeah.
Anything else, Ed? Non-shootout related.
Okay. I got one.
Doesn't even have to be about sports or hockey.
Right.
Not about the shootout.
Right. I got one. So I think you guys were talking about Engvall before and what his options will be. So Tom wants to know, do you think the Islanders can sign Engvall, or will he walk this summer?
Well, they can sign him. It's going to be their obligation. I think he's getting a little bit of a tryout. Lou probably has an idea of extending him by a year or so. I think the best thing you could do, as our guest Adam had mentioned earlier, is just give him a 1 or 2 year contract. Ideally, I think you just give him a 1 and see what he could do. There's no reason to go real long term with him, even if you think you're going to get him cheap on the dollar. I'd just go 1 year. 2-year max. It's Lou. He might go more. But do I think he'll be on the team next year? Yeah, I do.
Yeah, so one interesting thing that stood out to me was when they traded for Horvat, and Lou was asked the question, oh, yes, absolutely, we want to sign him, no question about it. And then he was asked a similar question when he brought in Engvall. And he said, yeah, we'll see. Well, we'll see what happens. So, I think it's going to be a trial. See if he fits in. See if he meshes with this team and he sees a longer term role with the team. I think he's open to it, and if he does, slot in nicely, yeah, he'll get a year or 2. If not, thanks for your service and move on.
Yeah, and on the answer on Horvat, he knew, even though he might pretend to not read the clips, right, he's well aware of what people are saying and writing about it, and he probably even when he said it, he might have had somewhat of an agreement or an understanding in place with Pat Morris as to what it was going to cost. So,
okay, Ed, 1, maybe 2 more, and then we'll get out of here.
I believe I touched base on every single.
We appreciate everybody participating.
Yeah, absolutely,
good session.
Well, with that, Ed, you know what to do.
Yes, I do. I pressed the button.
That's why you're here, buddy. All right, folks, I want to thank you all for tuning in to twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY and your favorite podcast providers later on. I want to send a huge thanks out to Billy Jaffe and Adam Proteau for joining us here tonight. 2 great guests with some great stuff. And, of course, a huge thanks to our wonderful sponsors, starting with Blue Line Deli and Bagels, located at 719 West Jericho Turnpike in Huntington. Check them out at BlueLineDeli.com. Big thanks to Lost Farmer Brewing Company, located at 63A 2nd Street in Mineola. Check them out at lostfarmerbrewing.com as well. And we've been having a great time over there, and there will be more fun to come. We'll let you guys know about that soon. And a big thanks to Main Street Board Game Cafe, located at 307 Main Street in Huntington Village. Check them out at mainstboardgamecafe.com. Chris Botta, let's remind everybody, where can we find you on social media?
At Chris Botta NHL.
You can find me at Shawnee Hockey on Twitter. You can find the show at Hockey Night NY on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And of course, folks, remember, if you like what we're doing here, tell your Islander fan friends and tell your Ranger fan friends too, just for shits and giggles. But tell everybody, spread the word, throw some reviews out there, rate, review, subscribe on Twitch, on YouTube, on your favorite podcast provider. Please spread the word. For Chris Botta, for Jay, For Ed, my name is Sean Cuthbert. We've been Hockey Night in New York. We will see you next week.